Hello, Perfect Death here, and I decided to try out a newish game, came out last week, called Victory Bells. It's an app game that I got off from my phone, so I can play it usually when I'm on breaks at work, but I also run it on the emulator when I'm at home, and we got into it because there's like a fairly decent amount of depth to the naval combat here. And yes, there's naval combat in here. I'll just jump right into that while I explain. I got a team, 7 ships, and in the kind of overmap battle of it, you've got your little nodes around here. I'm just gonna... I know if I hold down on my spot here, there's moderate rain here, so it actually reduces the visibility. So what this means is our engagement range is going to start a lot closer, and the ships that I'm running in this fleet are mostly destroyers. 2 of them are light cruisers, the rest are destroyers, so we're very close range. And I know from running this mission a couple of times, there's an enemy here who's going to come to me, and there's an enemy here who's going to come to me. So this is actually really good that there's a cloud right there. So I'm just going to end turn, and then here comes this one. It's a red strength one, so it's one of the tougher fleets in this fight. And I'm actually just going to slow it down to 1 times, because you can go all the way up to 8 and gets your missions done pretty quick, but I'll do it. It's one of these games where they anthropomorphize your ships in a sense. In lore, the ships are there, but then you've got like the spirit of the ship out there. So we got a surprise attack. We have McDougal here. She launched a salvo of torpedoes at this enemy ship. And now we're starting the gunfire phase. They already got hit. McDougal's actually the lowest level one. I just recently put him in. But because this is such a close range fight, you can see all their guns here kind of sticking out. It's just an absolute brawl. Like, we basically just spotted each other point blank and just opened up. Which is why I decided to stay there. Because as you can see... That's fine. It's fine. Just shoot him. And there we go. We're now in another torpedo phase, and that ship just got annihilated by torpedoes. Hooray! Now, she's weird. That's HMS Belfast, one of my light carriers, and the developers try to hire talent from that country and from that area. So Belfast is an Irish ship name, and so they got an Irish woman to do the voice for it. Now, other ships, if you want to get them, you need these items that you get from the maps. These are called vestures, and so this one's for one of them, and when you get enough of these, you can essentially just get a ship. And so at the end of the fight, we can see Cossack here. She got the MVP, basically means she did the most damage, and so they get a bonus of EXP. Usually Belfast is getting the MVPs, which is why she's level 51, when the others are trailing behind. They're trying to catch up. McDougal, you can see, is level 21. The AI likes to aim for the lowest, the weaker person in the group, so... And then the next fight's going to come over. Now, there's a bit more complexity, like if you wanted to have a open surface engagement where they would have to draw into closer ranges and then more of the tactics take place. I know this fleet's strong at close range, so I'm just going to try and take advantage of that. We've got another fight here. I think the Vanity class here is... I can't remember if that's a heavy cruiser or a battleship, but surprise attack, nailed it. I'm pretty sure it's a battleship with that much HP on it. So, well, there's a 28k. There you go, instantly knocked out their big battleship in the group, and now it's just destroyers. Ammo explosions. So the game tries to use actual naval wargame simulation stuff to determine what happens. There are other games like this, and they tend to just RPG it and really simplify it. And this game decided they wanted to keep to the naval simulation stuff. So while HP is important, you know, if you get a round exploding inside of your ammo magazine, it's going to do a ton of damage. But that's if the simulation says so. And we can see here, this is Audacious, or L'Audacious. She's one of the French ships in there. She doesn't have a character voice, so gradually I think they'll try to employ more. But so what I'm actually going to do right now, it's 7:53 daytime. I'm actually just going to hang out here, and I'm going to wait until nighttime. And so I got a little bit of daylight hours, so I'm going to try and see if I can get a scout there. No scout, so right about 8 o'clock, the scout stops. It turns to daytime, or it turns to nighttime. We can see that the moon isn't even really out. That's that little moon symbol, so it would actually determine how much light is outside. So it's pretty dark. This is going to mean we start at a very close fight again. We have another big full-strength enemy fleet here. And this is definitely a heavy cruiser there, with some light cruisers.
Do you suppose she rehearsed that? Just sat alone on an empty ship and repeated it to herself until she had it right?
Some of their audio is actually quite funny. But yeah, this is a night fight. Basically, there's two different groups here. You can see these little icons. So this is group 1 is the green ones. They've got a group, and each group has a spotlight unit that will try to illuminate a target every phase. And since we both have two separate groups, that meant two different spotlights. Now, spotlight ships illuminate themselves just as much as they illuminate their opponent.
Do you suppose she rehearsed that?
And there she goes again.
On an empty ship and repeated it to herself until she had it right?
So sometimes you can try to take advantage of that by making it sure that whichever ship is like on your tail or the front part that's using the spotlight, that they're the kind that, you know, can handle getting shot at. That's why I have McDougal in the middle, because the middle one doesn't use their spotlight. Though McDougal is definitely take a beating. They're gonna have to get repaired after the mission. Now, you can lose ships if you let them go to basically 0 health and then you try to get into another fight. The game will warn you and say, hey, you will lose this ship if you keep going. So let's just put that through the repair. We can see in the dry dock she's got about a 1 minute repair. And so there is like a premium currency. You do get a lot of this premium, not a lot, you get a trickle of it every day, and a lot when there's like a maintenance. We just recently had a maintenance, and I think it gave us 150. I kickstarted the game, so I actually started off with quite a bit of resource here, or prestige here. And then you have these different kinds of, you know, tabs over here for doing R&D, because there's a pretty big thing for improving your equipment. And so I'll actually get into some of that stuff here. So McDougal's being repaired. So let's go look at Cossack here. Now she's got 4 of these twin 4.7 inch caliber guns. 45 is the barrel length basically. And so I've got like a single version of it here, and this is the twin version here. Then there's some different ones, like there's this American version, like their destroyer gun here, which is a 5-inch gun, but it's a 38 length barrel. So less velocity, but it's a bigger round, so it does have a little more range because of that. And because this one is a twin gun and this is a single gun, it actually has, you know, a lot less weight. There is a twin version which is on McDougal right now, and I've actually got the twin version. I got a spare one, and I'm processing that through R&D, because you consume one, and then it lets you do R&D, and you can see these little percentage numbers. So this twin 5-inch gun is at 13%. Once it hits 100%, you've basically worked out all of the kinks in the problem. Well, in this case, they're called the gremlins. And I'll just collect McDougal there. So if we look at, say, this Mark 15 torpedo, you can see it's got 5 of these red stars. Those are gremlins. They cause problems. And historically, the American Mark 15 torpedo was really bad, and it would take a long time before the US would actually work these problems out. And you can basically do that in the game through this R&D process, where you take time to essentially reverse engineer the torpedo and then test it and test it and test it. And every testing phase gives you a little more progress. And then once you do produce it, you can try to do some things to edit it, and that editing can introduce problems back into the torpedo. So there's this big process in order to try and like make your gear as good as possible. Right now I'm doing these pure oxygen torpedoes, which is what Japan used. These are actually very dangerous torpedoes because pure oxygen is very, very flammable. Or at least it's a rich oxidizer, so it makes everything burn. And it makes these torpedoes perform very well, but they have a chance of catching on fire. So, but they have extreme range. And so I figured it's a good option to use one of the orange slots that you get, which is a little bit better than the blue slots. But you get more blue slots than you get yellow. I get a yellow slot at level 30 here. So, and then there's the production. So I did produce some things for some of the people, and I've got some of these other things in, production here. So like with this guy, I actually can see that he has 2 of these advantage ones here that I've known about them. There's 2 more slots that they can unlock for these bonuses, and then there's 2 of these yellow ones. We know, like, there is one that exists here, I just don't know what it is and what it does. And then there's a chance that I can gain a new one, and then there's a bad one hiding in here somewhere that I gotta find, and then you can get rid of it. And so eventually you can like work through this stuff and try to make your gear better. So I've got a couple of items that I've got sitting around that I might want to start processing that way. And then I've also got in my inventory all of these vestures. So when I go back to, say, Cossack here with their guns, their fire control, which is your accuracy, and the redundancy number here is like the amount of people out looking. So this one has like 4 spots of people looking, and this is 1 spot. So this is really good for detecting torpedoes, for example. But it's also very heavy because you just have all these platforms everywhere. But yeah, you have all these different tiers for different types of guns. And you have a weight capacity up here. And then you have your anti-aircraft guns, the torpedoes, the depth charges, the sonar. Some things have aircraft. Then you have like the crew slot where I've got the engineer here. And then this tab here is for promoting your ships. And you could just autofill, and that'll try to put the preferred ones.
God, I never thought I'd see this again.
If you do a preferred one, they get double the bonus.
You have a good eye.
And it also gives them EXP, but you can't go higher than your HQ level. Their level can go higher just from farming and fighting in battles, but leveling up them through these promotions caps out at your HQ level. But they give you these, permanent stat bonuses. And, I could decide like, hey, I want, light battery 1 gun damage on this ship. So I can try to use up the items that do that. But these items are also used to get new ships. So if I actually scroll down on my side here, you can can see some of the other ships that I have. And then these ones here, rescuing is essentially I've accumulated all of their vestures needed to get one. So this one needs 3 vestures to get. And then like further down here, like I can go way down. So like a German heavy cruiser here. This one I think is like Graf Spee. She needs 71 items. So, and then I have this one. This looks like Paris. Now Paris is 131, so I could start farming a Spanish battleship if I wanted to. I don't know where these are. I must have gotten them as like a random drop at some point. So there's no specific campaign that I have access to that I've discovered drops this item. There's a couple of others, so there's a couple other spots in the world I can get this item from. Or I could do this rose option, where if I rose one, there's a chance that I'll get items that can get the character, right? So if I wanted a battleship, this particular one, I could start gradually getting them. Now when you're at about HQ level 50, that's apparently when most of the battleship maps come out. So I'm like way behind from, being able to do that, which is why I've been focused on getting like destroyers and light cruisers. I do have I have 2 heavy cruisers. I have like Exeter here. Heavy cruisers have these 8-inch guns. And you remember my destroyers were like 4 to 5-inch. Light cruisers like Belfast here is 6-inch guns. But she's got like triple turret, 4 of them. So that's a lot of 6-inch guns. Plus she's got a battery of 4-inch guns. And then she's also got a couple of torpedoes. So, and she even has some scout planes. And of course I can take these out, I can reverse engineer them, and I can try to develop these all to be better. So there's a lot of grinding. So it's going to take a while.
It's time for more fire drills, Captain. I've been reading battle reports from around the fleet and it gives me nightmares.
You can actually see what some of their other items are, but from here I can't go and search for the map specifically from this menu here, but yeah, like McDougal here, this is where their twin guns are. So these ones, for example, 18k range. The Americans got into this dilemma where they didn't know what they decided to switch from just lots of surface action type guns, which this particular gun is good at, to these dual purpose guns, these single barreled ones. So it is lighter because it's only 1 barrel, but it's not light enough to just put twice as many on, because these have things like power loading, and also they have elevation controls. So like this has an 85-degree angle, and the other gun's only a 35-degree. This determines how good your ship is at shooting at aircraft. And there are definitely aircraft in the game. There are carriers. Carriers will attack you with dive bombers, and dive bombers come from above. So if you want to shoot at them when they're dropping down from above, having a gun that can aim up higher helps. And these are, big 5-inch artillery shells. They have a pretty good burst charge. So a dual purpose gun is the kind of gun that can shoot at a surface target and then aim up and shoot at an airplane when needed. But of course, it's not quite as efficient as like a dedicated, surface gun. So McDougal here is very much specialized at fighting surface targets. And sometimes you see these, in the character design, where, she's got a torpedo for a baseball bat, basically. And there's definitely little bits of lore. For example,
I like to make drills tough in the morning and tougher in the afternoon.
One of these items that she's got is a note of probation for overuse of explosives. So, lovely. So there's definitely stories behind a lot of these ships, and some of those stories go into the character design. And currently I've got Fleet 2. Yeah, they just did what's called a cruise. Once you hit level 15, you can send a fleet off. And this fleet went to do a cruise on this map here.
A lot of Morgana activity down here.
Most of them are doing supply, so once I take this, it's going to give me some resources, right? I was looking for some manpower, some ammo, so I picked a certain map that gives a higher yield of that, and I sent them on a supply mission, basically. Heavy cruisers do a salvage mission when you send them on a cruise, so they gained vestures while they were away. And they gained a tiny bit of EXP. It's not really worth sending them on cruises without a ship that gives training bonuses when you send them on cruises. But this was a resource run because
A lot of Morgana activity down here.
I'm almost capped. Like, I am capped on fuel, almost on metals. I am capped on rare materials. Ammo's, pretty high, but my manpower is super low. So that's why I was farming that particular mission. So I'm actually going to... Now, the one character that I pulled back here, Ashigara, she's a limited event character, heavy cruiser, Japanese one. And she is dropped from I think there's 9 days left or so. And so there's a map that drops her.
So quiet.
That took about 2 days of pretty regular playing to get her. There's one of the other ones, which is, if I go into the tab over here, there's the events. We can see that, yeah, Cradle Rocks is the 8-day one. That's for another heavy cruiser, the Pensacola, American one. And one of the other things to talk about, actually, is this war tab here. The game doesn't have PvP yet. This one here is essentially just a scoreboard competition. So because when you start the game, they ask you what nation you want to play and what your starting ship is. And while you can get ships from any nation, you will get these daily and weekly missions based on the nation you picked and which alliance that is part of. And so the United Kingdom that I started in is part of the Allies. Everybody's part of the League of Nations. And so you get these different missions. They're essentially just like, go do a certain amount of repairs, get a certain amount of victories under certain conditions or on certain maps. And then you usually gain rewards for doing that. Like this one could be 500 fuel and some resource things there. This one would actually give me some weapon parts that I can use or reverse engineer. And they also give you VPs. And your VPs they increase your rank within the team, and then it also scores up the total. So you can see Italy is way ahead of everybody else by like almost 500 points ahead of Germany. And so poor Soviet Union's pretty far behind. But the UK is actually overtaking Japan. Japan was really high ranked last week. So, and you can even see like who's on the top for this one. So this Cora guy is just carrying the UK. I don't know exactly how you get your stats that high, but he's got his really high, and I'm sitting at like 12th, so I'm not at the top 10. But oh well, I'm not tryharding that much. I just had a bunch of time off recently, so, and I wanted to give it a good stretch, see what this game was about. And yeah, I'm like 119th on total, so some of these ones are pretty scary. Like the Italians. I think one of the top guys in the Italy, was he which alliance was he in? Or is he in Allies? Oh yeah, Wigbert. This guy, he's you get a character portrait based on which ship you've chosen as your secretary. and this is a Italian battleship. So the fact that he was one of like the early guys flaunting his battleship is definitely a flex that he farmed a battleship already. And so right now this quest is bugged. There's actually no location for it. It takes me over to MTC. So I can't actually do that one yet. But the general play loop is, right now I'm doing this one because
Clean air.
I want this
Watch
destroyer.
out for frostbite, though.
This destroyer is Nubian, and it's one of the tribal class destroyers, the same class as Cossack and Zulu that I'm using. So I'm like, you know what? I want to farm a level 20 map, and hey, this map will give me Nubian. So just switch on over to that one. Go back into the battle, do the same one again. Oh, we got clouds here again. I can just barely see it under here. And there's clouds down there. So I'm just going to wait for this ship to come on over. Now, I'm actually just going to speed her up to 8. And then you can see, boom, look at that. So that was our surprise torpedo attack. Bam, 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 bam. And then they just shoot. One of the things that I was actually doing is when I was working, whenever I'd go on break and just pull that out, and while I'm eating, you just tap the screen every now and then. Get a couple of missions done. And then break's done. Anyway, since this spot has rain, I'm just going to start moving over to it right now. So we'll fight that one. And essentially, I'm just going to keep an eye out for the condition of my ships, make sure they're not getting too damaged. But you can see that one fight, no damage at all. Edinburgh took a little bit of damage, a little scratch. Eventually, McDougal's going to catch up a bit in terms of EXP, because you get a growing penalty as you do lower level missions when these characters get too high level. But yeah, after this mission, I'll talk a little bit about some of the early meta in case anybody's going to try anything. What some like early game advice would be, because I have been leaning towards certain kinds of destroyers, for example, for the destroyer game. We can actually see it from my HP numbers here. Their HP will grow as they level, but ships have a size to them, and so the bigger a ship, the more HP they have. But they're also bigger targets, so one of the things that people found was happening a lot was the cruiser here, La Deschos, she would get hit a lot compared to the other destroyers because she is a rather large destroyer. In terms of, like, you can kind of get an idea from some of her stats here. She's got very high HP, but, you know, her height is really high. Her water line that's essentially like her length, and her, you know, height is pretty high. For a destroyer, like, that's a 410. Her capacity is over 500, and so Cossack's just barely under 500, and they don't have like a over 400 height or an over 30 waterline length, right? But then if I look at, say, Velasco, who is probably the smallest destroyer, they have a 21 length and 274 height, and so at a low level, you know, she's got a very small amount of HP, but she's really hard to hit 'cause she's just so tiny. But she's got less than 200 capacity for equipment, so she barely carries any weapons. So in one case, you can make use of those small destroyers because they don't get hit, but they also don't carry as much, you know, firepower with them. There's some other stats to keep in mind. I pinned reserves as one of them. So her reserves is at 8, so that means she can do 8 rounds of gunfire before she has to withdraw. And then if I look at Cossack, who's tribal class, Cossack has 7 rounds that she can fight for. McDougal here is 5 rounds of combat. So McDougal's going to run out of ammo before the others and have to automatically withdraw. Seguene is, I believe, it's a 6, and then like Belfast is being repaired. Edinburgh's the same class, so they'll have the same. Is a 6 as well. So McDougal's actually going to run out of ammo first in this group. My heavy cruiser Exeter here is a 6. What was Ashigara? Because I know she was... Let's see, Ashigara is a 5 for her reserves. So there is some things to keep in mind, because some battles do take a while. If you're using destroyers to shoot at battleships, it's going to take a couple of rounds of just poking away at them. So that's part of why torpedoes are pretty good for destroyers in certain situations, but you only get 2 battles worth of torpedoes, and they only can use those torpedoes a certain amount of times per battle, very, very few times really. And so you can change some of your fleet tactics as well. So this fleet doesn't really have any tactics. If I go to this, there's no way of specifically selecting these. It just rotates through them. But you can kind of get an idea for how they're going to perform. So Division 1 here, just default behavior. And then in surprise phase, at shortened brawl ranges, they'll fire a torpedo. At long range, their gunnery is going to do barrages. And then I'll just wait for the thing to rotate back around to the move phase again, and then I'll talk about the move phase. So in this one, when they spot, they're at flank. That basically means they're not quite in range yet. And then I think the brawl range, they were set to try to keep distance, which is okay for a cruiser, but it's not quite optimal for like destroyers to keep distance if they're the brawling types of destroyers, which these ones are. Yeah, hold that range at short, which means that they're trying to avoid a brawl. And these destroyers are actually quite good at brawls, but the cruisers don't want to go into those brawls. So I could change it and say, let's throw in a vampire, and let's throw in that one. So let's see. What do they have? Very similar. So Cossack, each ship has tactics that they can bring. So Cossack, they just have a hold at range at long and medium. So they're not a very good, brawling tactic ship to lead the group with. I've heard some people prefer Laudacious. Oh wait, I gotta do this, actually. Right? Yeah, there we go. So now she's the flagship. So let's see. So she does barrage fire at long ranges. She does flank speed at most ranges, and then does a hold at short range. So she also doesn't like to go into brawl, but she does the flank speed. So she closes the distance faster during every movement phase, in between every artillery phase. So she's actually a really good flagship for a destroyer fleet in that regard, which is part of why I've been trying to get some more destroyers that I can kit out to be, brawlers. Nagatsuki, she's a very small destroyer, so I wasn't really looking to use her for this.
Where do you need me, Captain?
But yeah, she's getting repaired. She's done repairing. Now, the other one I wanted to show was Yubari. She's actually, I have to. Who do I want to? Let's put vampire in here. So, Yubari, she gets these torpedo run tactics for her surprise. And then the other fleet gets like smoke screens and stuff. So torpedo runs are a bit different than a normal torpedo attack in that everybody in this division is going to fire their torpedoes all together at one ship. And then they get a movement back. So they can do a move speed to get away from the fight during the surprise phase. So it makes them a little more maneuverable, lets them kite a little bit. And that's good if you have long range torpedoes, which some of these ships do. These two, Shigure and Kasumi, they both have pure oxygen torpedoes. But it's still not the best fleet because I don't have another ship with oxygen torpedoes, which is why I'm R&D'ing this oxygen torpedo. In fact, I actually took one off of Kasumi, so she's only got one quad torpedo launcher, while Shigure has the two that they can fit. So I'm using one of her torpedoes. I'm consuming it to get a blueprint so that I can produce more of them. So that's my plan with this group. But currently this group is doing a lot of like those resource run missions. Sometimes they're also here to do the diplomatic relation missions. So I have an Axis, so a German ship, and a Soviet ship, because there's some missions that you have to do. Let's see, which one was it? Yeah, like this one here requires that you gain relationships with a ship Bell from the Allies, Axis, and Comintern. And you get about 1.5 relations per ship per battle. So that's why I have a German ship and a Soviet ship. Which, by the way, do actually have...
Утренние тренировки продолжаются. Я бы сказала, что мы наблюдаем улучшение в эффективности экипажа.
Which do have native voice actors for them too.
Der Morgendrill ist im Gange, Kapitän. Die Leistung der Mannschaft ist bis jetzt mehr als zufriedenstellend.
Totally didn't understand anything. Some of them are actually not too bad. Like, she is a 400. Voikov is a pretty small destroyer. I was thinking about having Moskva, because she's a pretty big destroyer as well. And so she would be able to actually be useful later on from what I was looking to do, which is just, you know, load up guns and torpedoes on them. But I think I've heard some people say they've rebuilt quite a few of these big ships. Like they got, say, a Volta, who's over 500, almost 600. And they got like 5 or 6 quad oxygen torpedo launchers on them, and basically just stripped down most of their guns and that sort of thing. Put light fire directors onto them, and they just use them to run in and just torpedo volleys and then run away. So she's actually got like lots of capacity for torpedoes too. Whereas some of these ships actually do have like mount limits to them. But the French and the Italians had like a bit of a historic arms race for building bigger battleships, or no, destroyers. They were trying to like one up each other on destroyer sizes until it was kind of a meme, and it's like, oh, is that just a light cruiser? It's a pretty big destroyer. Some of the ships, like the Americans, they liked to go to these, like I said, with these dual purpose guns, where their destroyers became really good anti-aircraft gun platforms. And the Japanese, if you want to do night battles, you can find their fire directors have a really good night operations modifier. So the lower this number, the better. This is your margin of error. And so if I look at, say, this Queen Elizabeth class 1, it's a 1.1 night operations. That's really bad for like compared to this 8, this .879 one. But it actually has a better daytime optic, right? And it also, this one has, this extra redundancy so it can spot enemy torpedoes. But if you're looking to do nighttime torpedo runs to just hit and run an enemy, then these night ones are actually really good for that. And so you could take one of these and you can put it through the R&D process and try and improve it and make it a little bit better. Currently, I've got a little bit of a backlog of stuff that I'm working on with my R&D right now. So I've got a couple of other things in here that I want to churn through that. So in the meantime, I've just been looking to level up until I get to, I think 30 was... Yeah, 30. 30 is when I get another slot. So there is also like a story mode, and then there's different character stories. So for example, you can see I've got stories for Ladatius, Theodore, Lampo, right? And at a certain point, you do have to pay money if you want, or at least prestige, if you want to unlock the rest of their story. And I think you get some strong stat bonuses if you like totally max them out, in terms of like story and relationships. And yeah, essentially you just pay like one time. I think someone says it's like close to $10 to get the full story unlocked. I know Ladatius has the Mimi one because of her sunbathing habits. So some of them have garnered their own attention because of that. But yeah, because I'm in the UK, I've definitely got a lot more of the UK ships unlocked. And oop, I did not want to do that. Where is my... There it is. There's my full screen button. I wanted to go back. And did I have... I've got you out. Yeah. So now I am fully ready to go and do another Nubian farm. But you can always find out what your progress is. So I can say go filter, and I can go DD, Britain. And you can see I've got just the one here. I know of this medal, which I don't have. I don't know where to find them. I know where this one is. And if I can get 4 of those, I can get Nubian. I can rose her to increase my chances of getting that. Plus on other maps, I'll have a chance of getting her items as well. Which is a good idea if you want to promote as well. So a rose will last for a day. So honestly, it's not a bad idea for me to rose her. Accumulate as many of these like other ones as I can as well. Because when you do, like I said, when you do the when you do the, we'll go back down to here. Nope, wrong one. This one. When you do the promotion, the more of their types that you can get into here, those bonuses are doubled if it's their preferred item, right? So if you can get at least one of each of those, then you'll get the maximum bonuses from a promotion. And like I said, you'll hit their level cap pretty quick too. So usually if I fill that up, they'll hit level 10 if they don't have any that's specific to them. And if they have more that are specific to them, then I can get up to like 15 or more, level 15 or more. So that's why it's probably a good idea to do the rose. So I just didn't know. There we go. So I'll rose, accumulate a couple more, and then I'll look to, in that case, let's just pull that down. It means some of these spots here I can start swapping out. So for example, Volta, I could put Volta in like Belfast Place. I can put Moskva into one of these spots too because she's got pretty good capacity as well. Mari's a 420. She's a 440. Bulldog's just a 200. Musk was a 470. Let's see. Lampo's a 260. Vampire's a 249. And then, of course, with Theodore is a 410. So, yeah, basically I could look at just making a full destroyer fleet if I wanted to. Which is probably a good idea, just because destroyers are definitely useful. You do have a 50 ship limit if you don't want to pay for extras. And who knows, we'll see. We'll see what I plan to do with the game, but I'll call it there for the video, since most of this is just going to be me doing other stuff with this game running on the side, and then occasionally just tabbing over and pressing buttons. So that'll be it for the video. Take care.